Hi, everybody. This is Charlotte Davis, and I'm so excited to be here with you for Summit 2022. It is so great to have both options this year with online and in person. I'm looking forward to seeing some of my family there, my first place family in Kentucky. But I'm also thrilled that you're here watching with us virtually. And today we are going to be talking about gratification versus growling, how to stay satisfied while you're losing weight. Just a little bit about me. I'm going to show you a picture of my family. It's taken on Mother's Day. This was actually taken on my mother's 90th birthday. So that's why she's in the middle of the picture. And her name's Mary. She has been in my first place groups ever since 1995. So I think she's a living testimony to what following the first place guidelines can be. But also in the picture, my husband, Tony, we've been married 35 years, and my grown children, Kayla and Jake. The next picture I put in there to tell y'all about a change in my life recently. As of June 30th, I am now retired from my job as child nutrition director for Searcy Public Schools. This picture is a picture of me with my staff, and I'm going to miss them, but I'm looking forward to what God has in store during this next chapter of my life. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about three different things, really, about gratification versus growling. But let's talk, first of all, about satiety and what that really is. Okay, satiety is just a fancy medical word for feeling full, the feeling of being fully satisfied. And if you're listening to this presentation, more than likely, you are either trying to lose weight or you're trying to maintain a healthy weight. And to accomplish either one of those goals, I think it's pretty safe to say that most of us do a better job if we're not hungry while we're doing that. So I personally have had a challenge the last couple of years. I've had a little bit of gradual post-menopausal weight gain. If that's TMI for you guys, I'm sorry. But women do have that. It's kind of a condition that happens. So my metabolism has dropped a little, even though I'm very active. I mean, I help lead body and soul classes a couple times a week. On other days, I either go to the gym or walk the treadmill or elliptical, something. But it's been necessary for me to cut back on my overall calories to stay at a healthy weight. And so I figured that maybe some of you guys have that same issue. So hopefully some of the things that I share today will be helpful to you in your weight loss journey or a journey to a healthier you. Scientists have learned a lot in recent years about the physiology of satiety and the hormones and everything that are involved in hunger and what foods maybe impact those. And so it's really amazing. And I always like to include a slide that has one of my favorite verses on it. Psalm 139:14. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. And one of the reasons I even went into nutrition is because it was so fascinating to me, all the things God did in our bodies to help us run, and how the perfect foods he's provided all the things we need to maintain these intricate bodies. And one of those things that's built into all these mini systems is our hunger and our satiety systems. And those are controlled by a couple of things. Well, more than a couple of things. But first of all, we're going to talk about body chemistry in regard to satiety. And then we're going to talk about better food choices for that, and then some behavior changes. There is a listing guide handout in the materials. So don't feel like you need to write all this stuff down. Most of it is on the handout. There are a few blanks on there just to keep you going and interested. But most of it's there. So don't worry about writing all this down. It is on the handout. First of all, in regard to body chemistry, we have some hormones that stimulate hunger. Probably the most predominant is called ghrelin, and it is created in the stomach. And it's released when the stomach gets empty. So when your stomach is completely empty, it's like that starts being made, that ghrelin's made, and then it tells your brain, okay, you're hungry. You have no food in your system right now. And so that's what happens to make us become hungry. So that tells our brain that. And unfortunately, when we lose weight, the levels of ghrelin continue to rise. And it's like our body, you may have heard of set point theory, where your body kind of tries to get back to where it was. And so those, for a while, those hormones will kick in and it'll seem like you're more hungry than usual, because your body's trying to pull you back to where you were before, just because it's kind of a safety mechanism that God builds into us, to help us during famines and things like that. So it's there, it has a purpose, but it's kind of aggravating sometimes when we're trying to lose weight to even feel more hungry. So that's one of the reasons that we're talking about this today, because it is real, it does happen. And you're thinking, why am I so hungry? So hopefully this will help you understand some of that. Another one that stimulates hunger is insulin-like peptide 5, and that's also listed on the slide. And it's created in the colon. So once again, the colon is like the last place that food is in your system before it's completely done. So it's like, okay, there is nothing here. So it's telling your brain, you need to put some food in your system. Okay, on the flip side, besides the hormones that stimulate hunger, there are some that inhibit hunger or make you feel full. Okay, so there's 4 of those listed on the slide there. The first one is cholecystokinin, or CCK. You can see why they probably abbreviated that. And it's created in the upper small intestine. Peptide YY, which is in the lower small intestine. Glucagon-like peptide, GLP-1, which is in the lower small intestine. And then insulin and several other hormones that are coming from the pancreas. Most of you have probably heard of insulin because of diabetes. But insulin is there. And there are many, many more that are inhibitors of appetite. I think this is so interesting, and God knows us really well. There are, percentage-wise, so many more that inhibit appetite than actually increase appetite. So that should tell us something, right? So we're going to talk about today. Fortunately, though, there are things that we can do with our diet and our behaviors that may help us manage this hormonally induced hunger that we have. As far as food is concerned, we're going to talk about some different nutrients that are of interest when it comes to hunger. The first one we're going to talk about is the one with the most research behind it, and that is protein. Some research shows, or a lot of research shows, that protein suppresses ghrelin, that hormone that I told you kicks in and makes you hungry. So it lowers hunger, especially between meals. So does this mean we should eat all protein? No. Our bodies need all kinds of nutrients. But it does tell us that it should be included with every meal and every snack, because that does help carry us over, because it does help prevent the hunger. Americans and probably many other developed nations tend to get more of their protein at lunch and dinner, though, or supper, as we call it here in the South. But protein a lot of times isn't included at breakfast for some people. So we definitely want to focus on breakfast and don't forget about it, and put some good protein there. And some examples of good protein for that would be like eggs, low-fat dairy, which could be like yogurt, or low-fat cheese, or cottage cheese, or low-fat milk. So there, or also nuts and nut butters. I know a lot of times for breakfast, I'll do like some whole grain toast with peanut butter, or a whole grain waffle with some nut butter. And that does carry me over so much better than if I don't have any protein. And a lot of times we tend to just grab something, maybe something that's, carbohydrate based, and the world kind of lends to that for breakfast foods a lot of times. But you definitely want to include some protein there. All the nutrition data shows us that at least about 20 to 30% of our calories should come from protein. And if you follow the Live It plan, guess what? It's all figured out for you. It tells you how many ounces of protein you need to get, how much dairy, all of that. And that's figured into the Live It plan. And then if you want to figure it on a personal basis, I've given you a little formula there as well. 0.45 to 0.55 grams per pound of your body weight is your protein need. Now, if you are significantly above your a healthy body weight, you probably want to base that on the healthy body weight that you're shooting for, and not on what you actually weigh right now. So when we're doing the first place food plans, we do it based on those calorie levels, and those are at the 20 to 30% range. Besides protein, there's another nutrient that is of interest when it comes to regulating hunger, and that is fiber. It stimulates production of GLP-1, and that was one of those hunger inhibiting hormones. So it can make your appetite go down if you eat more fiber. But all fiber is not created equal in regards to hunger, believe it or not. Research shows that soluble fiber is really the one that is of interest in controlling hunger. Both of them, both types are healthy, and we're going to talk a little bit more about insoluble fiber in a bit. But soluble fiber seems to be the most effective in controlling hunger because it packs, that's the way the term they use, packs the stomach. And the best way I can help you see this is like if you make some oatmeal or some dried beans and you let them get cold, they kind of congeal and absorb up the water, kind of forms in the bowl or the pan or whatever after a little bit. That's what happens in your stomach with soluble fiber. It pulls in all that fluid, makes you feel so full. And it also helps it slow down going through the digestive system. And so that also makes you feel full longer. And then besides that, it can also blunt spikes in blood sugar. So whether you're diabetic or not, if your blood sugar gets low, you immediately start getting hungry. I mean, your body stimulates all those hormones. So any fiber that can help, or anything that can help blunt that jump blunt that jump in blood sugar to keep it from crashing, that's going to be so helpful. So be sure that you get some good soluble fiber. The top sources of soluble fiber, I've listed a few there for you, but at the very top are beans. But then oats, barley, citrus fruits, and apples are also some of the really high ones in that. A recent review, this was so interesting to me because I grew up eating beans my whole life. In fact, when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't have a lot of protein. And so mom would stretch everything. We had meat extended everything, okay? Things like casseroles and soups and stews, a lot. But one of the things that we would do, especially in the summer, would be eat meals that were completely vegetables and have cornbread with it. And one of the vegetables we would always have would be some kind of beans. And I remember that being so satisfying. And now, just looking back on that, it also has created in my family, we all like beans. We have them all the time. But it does help you feel full. And this research showed that if you eat regularly, beans, peas, chickpeas, lentils, those can increase your feelings of fullness by 31% compared with equivalent calorie meals that are not based on beans. So I thought, that's like if you're having a 500-calorie dinner, then if part of that is beans, you're going to stay full about a third more than you would otherwise. So isn't that cool? Just to know that something so healthy, so full of fiber, can also help you not feel hungry. So that's awesome. And then, but we're not going to leave out insoluble fiber. It's the other type of fiber, and it's in fruits and vegetables and whole grains as well. And it doesn't have the packing effect and the absorption effect like the soluble fiber, but it does take longer to digest. Anything that has insoluble fiber takes longer. So it also a lot of times takes longer to chew. And you may notice that you might be eating a dinner or lunch filled with like a big salad that has a lot of things in it, and you're taking time to chew that, and your buddy over here who's eating a burger is done in like 2 minutes, and it takes you a while longer to get through that salad. And anything that takes you longer time to chew also takes a longer time to digest. And so it also slows that movement through your system. So you want to choose minimally processed whole grains as part of those insoluble fibers, something like steel cut or old-fashioned oats that take a longer time to chew, a longer time to digest. And also breads, if you're buying whole grain breads, which I hope you are, finding ones that have the larger pieces of grain, the more coarse texture versus the really fine texture. And of course, anytime that you can substitute a whole grain for a refined grain, like white bread or white rice, anytime if you substitute the whole grain versions of those, brown rice and whole grain breads, it's going to give you more nutrition, but also much more fiber that we're just talking about here. White and refined products tend to just speed through your system. They do not help you feel full at all. They are gone quickly because they're easily digested. So besides doing it for nutritional reasons, the staying full reason is a good reason to go with whole grain. Okay, besides protein and fiber, we're going to talk some about a term you may or may not have heard before, energy density. Research suggests that people feel full according to the amount of food that they eat, the volume of food that they eat, not the numbers of calories that they take in. And then going back to our example a minute ago of you eating a large salad for lunch that has all these different great ingredients, and then someone who's eating maybe a sandwich Not saying sandwich is bad, but you feel full. It takes you longer to eat, and it takes up more space in your stomach. You can see in this slide that my friend Helen has so graciously endowed me with here, that there are pictures of different foods in your stomach, and each of these pictures are a depiction of like how much space it takes up for about the same calories. So you'll see that last picture there with all the fruits and vegetables that are the non-starchy fruits and vegetables, how much space it takes up, and it would have the same calories as that tiny little bit of oil there on the left-hand side. So it's really important that we think about things in terms of volume. Energy density is the number of calories or energy in a specific amount of food. So high energy density would be more calories in a small amount of food, and low energy density would be few calories in a large amount of food. And I've given an example there on the slide of the pretty much the same food, but two different ways of eating it. And that's grapes and raisins. So like a cup of raisins has 480 calories. A cup of grapes has 104. And we're going to be talking why there's that big difference there. But you can see that the raisins would be a high energy density and the grapes would be low energy density. So there are three main factors in energy density. The first one's water, and that's the one that plays a part in the raisins and grapes. So what's the difference between raisins and grapes? The water, okay? It's been dehydrated out of it. And not to say that the raisins aren't healthy, they're fine, but you just have to realize that a small amount of them is going to have a larger amount of calories because the water has been removed. The second thing that affects energy density is fiber, and then the last thing is fat. So we're going to talk a little bit about each one of those things. As far as water is concerned, fruits and vegetables generally have a larger, high water and fiber content, which increases the volume of those foods, but doesn't add calories. So I'm going to give y'all some examples of just a chart that shows you the examples of some of these things. But on top of the fact that these have the water and the fiber, they also are rich in vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals. And basically, they are all superfoods. And we talk a lot about that in My Place for Nutrition. There's a whole section in there talking about superfoods and why we need to put all those different nutrients that God has given us in so much bounty in these fruits and vegetables. So let's look at these charts for a second. The first one, I've started the top. I've kind of gone in decreasing order of things that percentage-wise of water that they have, just giving you some common examples of things that you could choose. The top one there is lettuce, leafy lettuce. 2 cups of chopped leafy lettuce is 96% water, and it only has 5 calories. And this is pretty much across the board for any kind of dark leafy lettuce. I wouldn't recommend iceberg just because it's okay for a crunch and a little maybe tossed in there, but the darker you can go, the darker green, the more nutrition you're going to get. And the water is still going to be high. So be sure and try to work some type of lettuce or raw leafy green in there into your eating plan. Some other things are listed there, cucumbers. In fact, today, my husband is growing a garden. I help a little. He's the green thumb guy, though. So he does the garden, and I help process everything after it's done. But the cucumbers are so good this year, and they're so sweet, no bitterness at all. And I easily ate a cup, maybe more, at lunch. And I had a sandwich with some whole grain bread and lean meat and cheese, and I had those cucumbers and some carrots, and I felt really full because it was a large amount with the cucumbers and the carrots along with the sandwich. And it probably was very minimal in calories. I mean, it was the whole meal, and I felt very full and still do. So that's not that's just a personal example of that. Some other things that are listed there: bell peppers. We got our first bell pepper. It was about this big today off of the vine, and I'm excited about those because we love to eat them raw. We love them cooked in things, stir fries, in everything. So those are going to be so great. But they are 92% water, and they only have 46 calories in a whole cup. And just another side note about bell peppers, they have 337% of your daily vitamin C needs in that 1 cup. And if you choose a red bell pepper, then it's going to have a whole bunch of vitamin A, like 200% of your vitamin A for that day too. So, so there's just all kinds of nutrients in so little calories because these have so much water in them. So that volume is what's making the difference. The next page of the chart, I've tried to list some fruits on this one as well because Fruits sometimes get a bad rap, especially with all the, the keto diets and all the carb diets and all that, because they're like, oh, you don't eat fruit. It's terrible. It's not terrible. It has so much good fiber and so many good vitamins and minerals. And as you can see here, not very many calories because of the large amount of water that's present in some of these. Watermelon, a cup of cubes, 92% water, 46 calories. So and you're probably going to eat a couple of cups of watermelon. And that's, if you're like me, when you eat watermelon, so that's going to be only 80 calories for 2 cups of some kind of a fruit. So how awesome is that? And then so many berries and melons there. And I've also listed in there carrots. That's not a fruit, but just a medium carrot only has 25 calories. And, so you can get a lot of good water and vitamins and minerals from that. Apple, a small apple only has 53 calories and it's 83% water, so that water makes a big difference on energy density. Okay, switching away, but sort of away from the water, we're going to talk about fiber and its effect on energy density. Fruits and vegetables and whole grains contain fiber. It's from plants only. That's the only place you get fiber. And so it's going to have a lot of those that I mentioned before have a lot of water, but a lot of them also have a lot of fiber. And we already talked about how the fiber, both soluble and insoluble, can lower your hunger between meals. So that's awesome in that. But since we already talked about the fruits and vegetables, I wanted to highlight a few whole grains. I don't know about y'all, but the grain group has always been one of my favorite groups of all the food groups. Love it, love it. But I want to get a big bang for my buck. If I'm going to spend my grain dollars, what I call it sometimes, on something, I want it to be something I can know that I had something to eat. Okay. And so these are some some low energy density, grains that would be good for meals or snacks, like popcorn, air pop popcorn, a great food as far as it goes with fiber and low energy density. So a cup is only like 30 calories. And you can, if you're not into popping your own popcorn, there are some that you can buy that are made to be air popped. I think Skinny Pop, there's some others. I can't think of any just right off the top of my head. But if you want to purchase it, just look for the air popped ones and use that. Brown rice cakes. I mean, they're pretty big and they only have 35 calories. You can put some good nut butter on them. You can do all kinds of things with those and decrease the amount of grains and decrease the number of calories in your grains. So it's really awesome to do that. And then again, puffed wheat, which is kind of along the same lines as the rice cake. But I remember when I first started First Place for Health back in 1995, and I was looking at that grain group. For the first time in my life, I went and bought puffed wheat because it said you could have like 2 cups of it or a cup and a half. I can't remember. I think it was a cup and a half for a grain serving. And I was like, okay, I'm into that. I will go buy that. And Tony, my husband, was like, what is that? And I said, well, it's something to help me get a lot of volume with not a lot of calories. And so he started eating it too. So we both enjoyed that. And a lot of times now you can only find things like that at a health food store. But if you can find that, it's also a great way to decrease the amount of energy density in your grains. The last thing that affects energy density is fat. And unfortunately, it affects it on the flip side. It is very high in energy density. An example is 1 teaspoon of vegetable oil is 40 calories. And y'all may remember back on the other slide, we were talking about watermelon, and a whole cup of watermelon only had 46 calories. So we're looking at a teaspoon of oil being 40 calories and a cup of watermelon being 46 calories. So you can see there, the volume is quite a bit different. There are, let me think here, I think it's 48 teaspoons in a cup. So it would take 48 of those teaspoons to equal that same volume of watermelon. So tiny amount, but a whole lot of calories. Now, is that to say we shouldn't have fat? No, that's not true. We need fat, but we do need healthy fats. We do need those in our eating every day, and we need to just watch the portions. And that's why if you follow the First Place food plan, it shows you how many teaspoons of added fats that you can have in a day. And it's usually like 4 or 5 for the lower calorie levels. But that's because of its energy density, not because it isn't healthy, but because if you were to go way past that every day, you can see that you would sabotage your efforts to lose weight because you would have so many more calories. Or if you ate fried foods all the time, about every ounce of meat that you eat that's fried absorbs about a teaspoon of oil. So every ounce, if you had 3 ounces of fried chicken, you're talking about 3 teaspoons of fat. So, almost 150 calories are going to be, or 120 calories are going to be from just fat, just eating 3 ounces of fried something. So just keep that in mind, that those are very energy dense foods. Not necessarily bad in small amounts, but definitely energy dense. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about in regard to food is whole foods. And we talk about this a lot in First Place for Health, how eating foods in the way that God created them, as close to that as possible, is going to always, always, I mean, I can't even think of an example, but always be healthier. It would be better to have, it's like this, the difference between eating a baked potato and a potato chip. Okay, so a whole food baked potato, not that you need to eat lots of them or all the time or load them with butter and sour cream, but there's going to be so much more nutrition in that potato, like it is right from the ground, than it would be after it's processed into a potato chip. But a recent study showed that individuals who ate whole foods versus ultra processed foods unconsciously ate fewer calories besides the benefit of the better nutrition. And I was reading about this study, and what they did was they used the same group of people. It was like in the hundreds. I can't remember how many, but significant. And they followed a whole food diet for like 2 weeks. Pretty much everything they ate were whole foods. And then the next 2 weeks, they put them on basically ultra processed. And the calories that they gave them were pretty much the same. But when they ate the whole food diet, they lost weight and they felt more satisfied. Whereas when they switched over to the ultra processed, they unconsciously ate more and they slowly gained weight versus losing weight like they did on the whole foods. So a lot of it is how much chewing, all those things that we talked about earlier probably played into this. When they were eating the whole foods, they were probably eating more volume, more, you know, it was taking up more space in their stomach. They were taking more time chewing it. They were just feeling more satisfied. And whereas when they had all these easy to digest processed foods, easier to get through your system, they didn't feel as full. So they kept eating unconsciously. They weren't even telling them how much or to eat or not to eat. So I thought that was really, really interesting. But some examples of ultra processed foods are listed there. Things like sugary breakfast cereals or pastries, energy bars, fast foods, frozen pizzas. We know we can make healthy versions of all those things on our own. But the ultra processed versions a lot of times just don't have as much nutrition as what you could prepare for yourself. The last part of your food or beverage intake in this case would be water. Um, thirst is often confused with hunger. Research has shown that. So if it's not quite mealtime and you start to feel hungry, try drinking 8 ounces of water. See if it makes you feel any better. If it doesn't, then eat a small healthy snack. That's fine. Snacking's great. It can be a wonderful part of trying to lose weight because it keeps you satisfied. But just check and make sure to see if you're hungry. You may not be. So drink a cup of water. Also, scientists believe that drinking about 2 cups of water may stretch the stomach and send signals of fullness to the brain. So you might want to consider drinking 2 cups of water just prior to mealtime. Since it empties out of the stomach quickly, though, you want to do it as close to mealtime as possible. And a lot of times that will decrease the amount of overall food that you eat because you had that water to start with. Another note about that. There was a study that I read recently that said that you could even do a broth-based soup, like instead of water, like as a kind of like an appetizer. And a broth-based soup would be things like that had a chicken broth, beef broth, vegetable broth base versus a creamy soup. Now, creamy soup can have a whole lot of extra calories and fat, but a broth-based soup, especially those with vegetables in it, if you have that at the beginning of the meal, it counts kind of just like the water did having it at the beginning of the meal. And this particular study showed that the people that participated in this ate about 100 calories less at that meal than the people who did not have the soup or the water before the meal. So I thought that was really interesting as well. And I know growing up, we had a lot of soups as our main dish a lot of times, vegetable soups and stews and things like that. And water is part of that too. So that adds to the fullness feeling, but without the extra calories. Okay, now we're going to switch over and talk about not necessarily food and beverage things, but behavior changes that can affect how much we eat and our hunger levels. So the first one we're going to talk about is stress. I'm sure nobody out there has stress. But definitely we do, right? I'm being facetious. But stress raises the hunger hormone cortisol. So it's something that kicks in and your appetite goes up. High cortisol levels are generally thought to increase food cravings and have been linked to weight gain. And stress may also decrease levels of one of those inhibiting hormones, peptide YY. And so it's kind of a double whammy. One hormone's making you hungrier, and the other one is helping you not to feel full as long. So stress can do that to us. The effects may vary by individual, though. The results on this, like for instance, the type of stress, like work-related stress might cause you to eat more or have a higher appetite in that sense. But a grief stress, like a sudden loss of a loved one or learning that you have a cancer diagnosis, those types of things can have just the opposite effect. It can kill your appetite just temporarily. So it depends on the type of stress and it depends on the individual. So just bear that in mind. So managing stress, it takes many forms, and I'm not a counselor, but as far as if you need to have counseling, if you need to, spend more time in prayer, more time with friends, more time, things that you would do normally to manage stress can also help you in regard to your appetite. Okay, some things we can do with our eating that our behavior changes. First of all, we all know that hunger is very complex. I mean, we eat for a lot of reasons besides our stomach being empty. We eat for all kinds of emotional reasons. And for that reason, First Place for Health has included the My Place for Discovery books. We have several Bible studies that are focused on emotional eating, Be Free, Beyond Free, those types of things, because we know there are spiritual reasons, there are stress and emotional reasons associated with eating. So one of the things we need to do is to try to distinguish between stomach hunger and mind hunger. They tend to merge together a lot of times for us. But we can also use the way our mind works to help us with dealing with hunger. For instance, if we surround ourselves in our environment with healthy foods, we're more likely to eat those foods if we were all of a sudden stressed out and we're going to eat. If we've got vegetables cut up in the refrigerator or fruits or whatever, if we've got that ready, we can go to that. But if all we have is M&Ms and chips and crackers and things that are not the healthier things, then we're going to go to that. So we work with your psychology. Know that what's in your environment is going to be something that's going to be healthy for you, so that if you do get in that spot, you can use that to your advantage. The next thing would be to eat slowly. Most of you have probably heard that it takes 15 to 20 minutes for your stomach to tell your brain, or your brain to tell your stomach that you're full. Okay, so eating slowly really does help with that. And one recent study found out that people who ate faster actually took bigger bites and ate more calories overall. So if you slow things down, you would eat less. And then interestingly, some newer research even suggests that eating rate, the rate that you're eating, can affect your endocrine system. So it can affect the rate of those hormones being released or not released. You kind of retrain your body to release them at different times if you eat fast. And so that's interesting. I'm anxious to see the results of that, because our bodies are so adaptable. God has made us that way, So just seeing the results of that should be really interesting. Okay, avoid skipping meals. And this is for several reasons. One, and we talked about earlier with our blood sugar dropping when we're hungry. And so our body kicks in and says, okay, you got to get that up. Now, along with the hormones, your body is saying, okay, you have low blood sugar. Even though you may not be diabetic, it can still affect you that way. And the hungrier we are, the higher the chance that we're going to act on impulse, right? Like if we skip lunch at work through lunch, and then we're on the way home, we're stopping at the grocery store, we're stopping to get gas or whatever, or we drive by a donut shop and we're like, I'm so hungry. I have got to eat something, so skipping meals can put you in that place. Whereas if you plan a healthy meal, then you might not have that same reaction later. So it's important to do that. And then lastly, avoid distracted eating. And that's eating while you're doing all kinds of other things at the same time, whether it be working or reading or watching television or, those types of things. And the flip side of distracted eating is mindful eating. And in First Place for Health and My Place for Nutrition, I included a section in there on mindful eating, and it gives you some tips for every setting: shopping, eating out, recipes, all these different things that you can do to be more mindful and not eat when you're distracted, because that can really add to your hunger between meals, because you just eat more than you've realized that you've eaten. And the next topic is physical activity. And this one, when I was researching this, it's all over the place as far as how physical activity affects your hunger. Overall, it's just all mixed, but often when people begin a program of regular activity, let's say you or a buddy all of a sudden saying, okay, it's January 1, I'm going to the gym every day, I'm going to work out, and you're not really planning to eat any differently. You're just working out. This is your goal. And so when you start doing that, you might find yourself getting hungrier, because you're burning more calories. So you start eating. And so usually what you eat offsets what you burned. Because if you're not intentionally lowering your calories on a plan, then more than likely you're going to do that. That's research has shown that that's going to happen. You're going to more than compensate for what you did. Some studies show that exercise is thought to reduce the activation of the brain region linked to food cravings, which can result in a lower motivation to eat high-calorie foods and a higher motivation to eat low-calorie foods. So the way I think about this is, if I'm going to go work out, or if I'm going to go to body and soul class, I'm not going to come home and eat ice cream, because I've just worked really hard to burn off calories. So I'm not going to, in my mind, my desire has changed. I don't want to do that, because I've worked so hard and I don't want to offset what I did. So they're saying that there are some hormones that may kick in there, and other mechanisms in our brain that teach us to not overdo it. So lots of mixed research here. There's also one study I looked at that was pretty significant, that said people who are like pro athletes, that have prolonged training every day, that their appetites tend to increase. But I don't think most of us are in that. I mean, we're moderate exercisers, at the best. So these people are people who do this for a living, basically, and their appetite goes up based on everything that they do. But even if it doesn't actually help control our appetites, there's lots of good reasons to continue exercising while you're trying to lose weight. The first one being, it decreases your chance of cardiovascular disease. So heart disease, stroke, the risk of that goes down drastically. Secondly, if you include strength training in your exercise routine, then you know that what you are losing is more than likely going to be fat and not muscle, because you're maintaining the muscle with your exercise, your strength training. So, and then lastly, tons of research shows that you're better able to maintain any weight loss that you may have had, your success with that, if you exercise regularly. So whether or not the exercise affects your hunger or not, it does affect the success of your weight loss and maintaining that. So definitely want to encourage you to exercise regularly. The last behavior change I want to talk about is sleep. Studies show that too little sleep can increase your subjective feelings of hunger, appetite, and food cravings. Any of you who've stayed up late watching movies, you can probably identify with that. I mean, you know that you got to get up at 5 o'clock, but you stay up till 12 o'clock, and your body starts kicking in. Okay, well, she's awake, so she must need food. So if you stay up later than usual, your body's going to say, okay, I need to keep feeding you because you're still going. And so when those hormones kick in, a lot of times you eat stuff that's not so good for you, late at night. But sleep deprivation can also cause an elevation in that ghrelin, as well as another appetite stimulating hormone, which is called leptin. So it kicks in. Our body just says, okay, you're not getting enough sleep, so you must need fuel. So experts recommend, just so you know how much you should get, that adults get 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, while 8 to 12 hours are recommended for children and teens. So wrapping up, as you can see, there are so many different things we can do to try to help our hunger levels. And I hope if you struggle with that between meals, that maybe something was mentioned today that you hadn't thought of, and that you can start incorporating into your daily activity. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about today or any nutrition questions, feel free to email me at the email address that's on the handout or on the last slide. And I'll be glad to try to help you. If I don't know, I will do my best to try to find out. So I look forward to hopefully meeting a lot of you in person at some point, and I'm just thrilled to have my First Place family with me today for this video. Thanks. Bye.